It's Amy with Mindful Art Studio, and I am doing a little video to show you about my typical art journaling process. I frequently will start by writing out what I'm thinking and feeling. Obviously not quite this fast, but you don't need to be bored with that. So I'll write out what I'm thinking and feeling as kind of a first layer and just to get the creative juices and feelings flowing. And I love to use high flow acrylic paints. They're just my favorite. I love the way that they move. They act like watercolors, except that they're a lot more intense in tone. And I can just get some really beautiful layering and effects with them that I just love. And so I love to play with those. And, I don't typically, I plan some things, but with a page like this, it's not planned out. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm really just enjoying moving the paint around on the page and looking at the colors and seeing what feels good to put down. I'm not worried about what's going to happen, or at least I try not to. I try not to worry about that too much, and I try to just stay in the moment and enjoy what's happening. And I frequently, you noticed I had a little square in there. I sometimes create little squares or circles with mixed media paper or mixed media board and more of those paints. So I love having all those little smaller pieces around, and sometimes I'll incorporate or test out incorporating them into my art journal pages. And it's just a really nice option to have. You can see I'm mixing up some peach tones here. I put some darker tone in on the left, and now I'm coming in with a more orangey, peachy tone on the right, where the writing is. But see, this could change many, many times, and I think that's the beauty of working with paint in your journal, is that it can just continue to evolve. Now, a lot of people ask me whether or not I use gesso on my pages. I guess a lot of folks do that, but I don't. This particular journal is a watercolor journal, so I sometimes wet the page, and I did a little bit with this one before I start putting the paint down because of the fact that they'll move so well over water. But I don't really ever prep the page with gesso. I like the texture of the page as it is. Now, I didn't like what I started with, my beginning idea, so I'm changing it up a little bit. I just used some water in my brush to sort of erase what was there. And again, I try to work really intuitively and just kind of see what comes up and roll with that. So I was enjoying that combination of the blue and the orange. And so now I'm adding in some lower tones with some indigo with my paint. And I wear gloves when I use these paints because we don't know whether or not they're kind of cancer causing if you get them on your skin, so I tend to most of the time wear gloves just to protect my hands. You can also use a barrier cream or a glove cream, but I like the gloves for easy cleanup. You can see I wasn't feeling what was happening, so I used the side of my brush and then the front of my brush to just spread some color around. I like using those X shapes, and then I smudged it with my hand. Now I'm testing with more squares. So you can see this really is not a planned process, and I love to give myself that permission to just show up in my journal and play. And this is really how my intuitive process works. If you've taken any of my classes, Art Journaling 101 or the Freeing the Muse class, or in my Diving Deep class, which is all about intuitive process and blending that together with skill. It's just really learning to do that dance between bringing your artistic eye into a piece, but then always then stepping back with that technical part to let the intuition come in and just really roll with what feels good to do. And I just think that's so important because our journals really are this place where we can just show up, they accept everything. Some pages are going to look beautiful and others are going to look not so beautiful. But that's why they're there, and life is like that, right? Some things are attractive, some parts of life are attractive, and some parts are really kind of ugly and hard to look at. And I think it's important to have space for all of that in our journals. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what art journaling is about, right? It's a visual representation of what we might otherwise do all in writing. And so I think when, like me, you like to use it as a way to express yourself and a way to understand yourself and to go on adventures in your imagination, then there's space for everything in your journal. I'll let you in on a secret, which is that at the end where this page ended, and I don't know if it's done or not, because that's kind of how I am, this is not necessarily my favorite page in my journal. And so it might evolve past where it is right now, where I leave it in this video. Or it might stay this way all the time, or it might take on new meaning as I look at it over time. And I will look at it over a lot of time because I work in several journals at one time, because that really helps me to kind of stay loose and not get too tight or tied in with any one thing. But I love working that way because it really just gives me space to let go and play. And I tend to like my work more in general when I do that. So now I've got all those dots on the one side, and I'm drying that side a little bit, and I've pulled out my gel medium, which is what I use as glue. And I'm affixing one of those little paintings. And I've decided just to put 2 on the left. And that's going to be where it's going to stay for the moment. I don't know if I'll add some writing to it, but this is kind of where it's at. And it was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed, and you can catch more at mindfulartstudio.com. I've got lots of blog posts and free webinars that I run, as well as more videos here on YouTube. So come check it out at mindfulartstudio.com. And thanks so much for joining me today. Feel free to leave a comment. Bye.